What is up, Solo fam? My name is John Solo, and today on the Solo channel, we're doing something a little different than usual. In last week's episode of Messed Up Origins, we covered the history of the Rumpelstiltskin fable, and while doing so, we briefly touched on a writing principle used in many famous fairy tales called the Rule of Three. I said that if you guys were interested, I could make a video covering the famous rule in more detail, and, well, you were interested. So that's what we're diving into. Not only what the Rule of Three is, but where it comes from, how it's used, and some famous examples from creative history. Solo fam, don't forget to smash that like button with all your heart. If we get this episode over 5,000 likes, I'll know you guys liked it, and maybe I can start making content like this more often. Make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already, and ring that bell to be notified about new content from yours truly coming to your sub box every week. So let's start with what the Rule of Three actually is. That's probably a good idea, right? The Rule of Three is a writing principle that suggests that a trio of events or characters is more humorous, satisfying, or effective than other numbers in execution of the story and engaging the reader. The audience is also more likely to remember the information conveyed. In other words, it's a strategy that writers use to make their work more appealing and more memorable to whoever's reading it. It can be applied to words, sentences, paragraphs, chapters, whole books, or even important characters and plot devices. As we've talked about many times on this channel, especially since starting the Fable series, for the vast majority of human history, stories were shared verbally. Whether you were a king sitting on a throne, a hunter resting by a campfire, or a slave just trying to pass the time while you work, if you wanted to hear a fable, chances are it was going to be out loud. Did you notice I followed the Rule of Three and listed 3 examples right there? It's also an effective communication tool and great for public speaking. Both Martin Luther King Jr. and Abraham Lincoln used the rule in some of their most famous speeches, so keep that in mind. By the way, I'm not saying these ancient societies didn't keep records at all. When it came to the important information that was necessary for society to function, like laws, business transactions, and literature, all kinds of recording methods were used, from carving clay tablets to using reeds to write on parchment. But in the early days, it was mostly upper-class citizens and other important figures who had access to these tools. Times were just different back then. The average person didn't have a slab of damp clay and a wedge sitting around for whenever they wanted to take notes, if they even knew how to read or write in the first place. So as a result, other strategies had to be used. It just so happens that humans have evolved to become highly skilled in pattern recognition. It's a skill that helped us survive out in the wild and organize the world into the somewhat less chaotic state that it's in today. The lowest number of elements required to create a pattern is 3, therefore stories using that many elements became the easiest for listeners to remember, which might be why so many of the fairy tales we know nowadays have the number 3 scattered throughout, but more on those later. Have you ever noticed that things that come in threes just feel better?
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
That's because in addition to being a pattern that humans find appealing on a subconscious level, it's also concise and has a rhythm. The brevity appeals to our naturally short attention spans, and the rhythm allows us to accurately predict what comes next, a phenomenon that we humans find incredibly satisfying as well. As an example, think of the phrase ready, set, go. As much as we say it to prepare and concentrate the runners at the start of a race, those 3 stages convey a steady build-up to the moment of execution and transformation as their bodies go from being stationary to in motion. That steady build-up can also be applied to storytelling, poetry, advertising, and telling jokes. Remember, comedy comes in 3s. There's a reason there's so many jokes about 3 people walking into a bar.
Mrs. Kelly,
Yes?
why are you doing everything in 3s?
Oh, so Charlie doesn't die. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2.
If you want to break it down even more, we can also touch on the different forms the rule can be used in. A tricolon is a more specific use of the Rule of Three, where 3 words or phrases are equal in length, syllables, and grammatical structure. The phrase Veni Vidi Vici is a tricolon that means I came, I saw, I conquered. There's also a form called a hendiatrus. This refers to a figure of speech where 3 different words are used to refer to a central idea. For example, the phrase sex, drugs, and rock and roll all describe the life of a rock star. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are the unalienable rights that all humans have according to the Declaration of Independence. 2 more hendiatruses we teach children to keep them safe are stop, drop, and roll for when someone lights them on fire, and stop, look, and listen before they cross the street. And the phrase tall, dark, and handsome would refer to someone else. Now that you know what the rule of 3 is, where it came from, and how it can be used, let's look at some more examples of it being applied. In our most recent story about Rumpelstiltskin, he has to transform 3 different rooms filled with straw for the helpless girl. At the end of the story, he gives the girl 3 days to guess his name, and on each day, the writers gave us 3 examples of her guesses. That version's by the Brothers Grimm, who actually use the rule a lot in their stories. In their rendition of Snow White, the evil queen tries to kill her on 3 separate occasions. In their Cinderella, the festival takes place over 3 days. In the original Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen, there's 3 stipulations to the contract she signs, and in Disney's adaptation, Ariel has 3 days to receive the kiss of true love. Disney actually uses the rule a lot too. You'll notice that several of their movies feature trios of characters. The Aristocats have 3 kittens, Mulan has 3 sidekicks in the army, there's 3 gargoyles in The Hunchback of Notre Dame, 3 fairies in Sleeping Beauty, and 3 too many Pirates of the Caribbean movies. There's 3 Darling Children and Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie, which they adapted, and in the original Aladdin, he actually had infinite wishes, but they gave him a limit of 3. Then you have fables like Goldilocks and the 3 Bears, 3 Little Pigs, 3 Billy Goats Gruff, which not only follow trios of characters, but the events in those stories happen in 3 stages as a result. Just look at Goldilocks. For the first half of that story, we're following the girl as she tries the porridge, chairs, and beds. Each of those comes in 3s, she tries every one, and her reactions follow an obvious pattern. The second half follows the 3 bears as they come back to find their home has been vandalized. They each react to their porridge, chair, and bed being tampered with, and their reactions follow an obvious pattern as well. And at the end of the original story, they try to kill her in 3 different ways: burning her alive, drowning her, and impaling her on a church steeple. With so many things happening in 3s, it's really no surprise that's one of the most famous fairy tales in history. In summary, the rule of 3 is just about everywhere, from the media you consume to the strategies you use to put yourself out when you're on fire. On top of that, it's a strategy you can use when addressing a crowd of people or arguing with one person and you just want to hammer your point home. Keep your eyes peeled for the next day or 3 and you're sure to find examples of it all around you. And if you want, you can come back here to comment on what you found or hit me up on social media. Handles are right in front of you and links are down below. As always, Solo fam, make sure you smash that like button so we can reach our goal of 5,000 likes and keep our family growing strong. If you haven't already, subscribe to join the Solo fam and ring that bell to be notified about new content that learns you something every single week. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll be seeing you very soon. Until next time, my name is John Solo, and remember, John shot first.